What's up everybody, hope all is well. I'm back with part 2 of the Overwatch change analysis, a video I didn't intend to make, but I have to admit after the last one which focused on just supports, I was curious about the entire roster, so I got to work. 6 years, 32 heroes, 800 plus changes, it's all here. You're gonna want to stick around for this one because the end result is almost unbelievable and oh so Blizzard. So, quick recap of the situation. As a little test of my memory bias, I decided to review all the patch notes and determine if the support role was better or worse than launch. That was my last video, but it begged more questions than answers, like how does support compare to other roles? And despite being a support focused video, I didn't include the two most important metrics, HPS and DPS. I talked about them and around them, but didn't provide specifics. So I'm making all that right, here's how. All heroes are now included. That'll let us compare individually and grouped by role. I also calculated a base and final DPS for each and the same for HPS where applicable, and of course a simple change count so we can see who and what's been focused on the most over time. So are you ready? All you griefers who want to relish in the nerfs of others, all you fanboys and fangirls who want to bask in the glow of Blizzard's lovier main, all you forum goers claiming DPS and heal creep, all you conspiracy theorists who think it was all for naught, I've got you covered. Let's do this. Before we get into it, I need a moment to discuss the data, specifically calculating DPS. Initially, I planned to do both a primary fire DPS and an ability-driven DPS. For some heroes like Ana, this was simple. For others like Doomfist, impossible. Some heroes get their power from combos, some can shoot two things at once like D.Va, combine that with all the hero interactions like Discord, what you're actually shooting at, like health, shields, or armor, the defensive abilities they may be using to mitigate your damage, if there's any damage fall off, and yeah, you can see how it quickly spirals out of control. It's impossible to consider every scenario, so ultimately I settled on doing just a simple primary fire DPS calculation, just rate of fire times damage with the assumption the hit lands at optimal range. For some heroes like Tracer, yeah, that's fair. For others like Echo, no it's not. But therein lies the important insight. In considering raw DPS figures in Overwatch, you need to take everything else into account. I can't do that for you, so be a critical thinker here. These are just numbers and you need to apply some context to make them meaningful. So starting from the top, let's go through a few quick and easy ones. This is average change count by role. In other words, a DPS hero saw on average 22 changes, support 25, and tank just 21. This breaks the same data out to show how those changes were spread across roles, green are buffs, red nerfs, and purple net change. Support the obvious losers here, but remember there's no context. You might be thinking, wow, on average a DPS hero got 6 more buffs than a support hero? But that's 6 individual buffs over 6 long years that could have been reverted or even reduced further later. Still, I found it interesting, but it begs the question, how'd the individual heroes do? This is change count by hero. What we can take from this is how much attention's been given to each. A good example being Tracer, who's been here since day one, compared to say Doomfist, who was one of the later additions. Now there are two ways you can interpret the attention. First, they're a problem hero that needs constant tending, or two, they're a dev favorite. Almost universally, I think it's the former, with Cassidy being the exception. He's the only hero with a lot of changes that seems to actually be better, unlike Doomfist, Mercy, and Sombra, to name a few. If we take that same data and display them by role, it provides a little extra context. Wow, yeah, it does. DPS on the left, support in the middle, and tanks on the right. Look at DPS, living the good life. Tell me how that feels. Please? I kid. But yeah, you guys did pretty well, as did tanks and Brigicide's support about broke even. Again, we can't take much away from this other than to conclude on average, DPS and tanks had better looking patch notes. So let's get into DPS. For now, we'll ignore headshots. Before I show this, ask yourself what you think the average DPS of a hero was at launch. What do you think it is today? Do you think it went up or down? A big change or no? Here it is. At launch, average DPS was 134. Today it's 136. I personally was thinking more like 150, so a little surprised, but it's important to note that again, this is just primary fire, no abilities. When you look at it by role, you don't find anything really interesting either. Both DPS and support up a pinch, tank down a pinch, none large enough to draw any inferences or conclusions from. Breaking out further into each hero gives a little better insight. By the way, I used ADS values for Ashe and Widow here. You can see some winners and losers. Symmetra's worth mentioning. Now her primary fire originally did 30, 60, 120 DPS as it ramped up, and it's currently 60, 120, 180 I believe. So from this chart, you might think she made out pretty well, but again, context, not so much. Here's the same data just as a percentage change. This is relative, so like Ana's big 9% increase is actually just a small bump from 80 to 87. And finally, here's potential max DPS with headshot modifiers included for those heroes who have them. Yes, in theory, Tracer and Reaper can do 480 DPS. Tracer has 6 damage per bullet, 2 bullets per shot, 20 shots per second, double that with a 2x headshot modifier, and you've got 480. But again, I can't stress enough how situational all these DPS figures are. They assume perfect range, perfect accuracy, and 0 mitigation, rare to the point of being essentially non-existent. Roadhog really stood out to me here. That's just stupid, and to add insult to injury of every hero, he's probably most likely to get the full critical effects because of his hook. And we'll close quickly with heals per second. When the game launched, base healing without abilities was 53. Today, it's 54. And this final chart is a better representation of HPS. Light blue is launch HPS, dark blue is today's HPS, and the orange is potential HPS with abilities, but no alts. Anna gets 50% healing buff from Grenade, Baptiste gets an extra 15 HPS from Regen Burst, it's 75 total over 5 seconds, Brigitte gets an extra 15 per second from Inspire, Lucio goes up to 52 with Amp It Up, though it was at 56 at one point, Mercy a lowly 55, if she ults that goes up to 115, but we aren't including alts here. Moira adds 65 if you include her orb, but technically it can heal more than one person up to 300 total, so that's tough to gauge. And finally Zen, no way to boost his healing except his ult, and again, we aren't including those here. So final thoughts, 6 years, 32 heroes, and 800 plus changes, all for a 1.5% change in DPS and a 1.9% change in HPS. Like I alluded to earlier, unbelievable and oh so Blizzard. They've got a really bad rap for balance, but I'm not sure that this is evidence of it. Perhaps, or perhaps I'm being too harsh. After all, the numbers I presented don't really mean anything. Truth be told, after doing the review, I'm struggling to find any real value in it. All it's proven to me is that a hero's true power is derived from a confluence of factors that are often, I dare say typically, beyond numbers. And those factors can be somewhat unique to each and every one of us. Take Hanzo vs Junkrat. Junk has a significant DPS advantage on paper, but does anyone really think he's the better DPS hero? If you've played Overwatch for any meaningful amount of time, you know he's not. However, there's 2 observations I am confident in. First, and likely to upset some, I think we need to put the heal creep theories to bed. It's just not there. And the 2 associated abilities that create that feeling, Grenade and Lamp, have both been nerfed heavily since launch. DPS creep on the other hand, well, if your only measure of that is primary fire, then no, there's no power creep either, but you would be wrong in measuring it that way. And my second observation is that player power has changed primarily through wholesale changes, like the armor nerf, fall off changes, or channeled alt nerfs. It's almost as if Blizz has intentionally left primary fire alone and even abilities to a degree. But good news is, this exercise gave me some good ideas for tracking player power, and I plan to start that come Overwatch 2. Should make for some decent educational videos. So I'll see y'all out there, and don't unsub when I'm stomping all over your team as Anna. I kid. Or do I? And with that, I'm done. I appreciate you taking the time. Take care of one another, and I will see you soon.
Nanoboost is ready. Get in there, and I'll hit you. Drop the beat! I am from the